Welcome back to my channel. Now that Tenet's out, today we're going to be ranking Christopher Nolan's movies from worst to best. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your ranking of Nolan's movies are. Even if you haven't seen them all, whatever you saw is fine. That way we can compare and discuss, as this isn't meant to be a definitive ranking by any means, just based on how I personally feel about them. And make sure to give this a thumbs up if you like these videos. It helps me out immensely if you do that. I did a review series going through each of Nolan's films individually. I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description in case you missed any of them, so you can get my thoughts more in depth. Also, if you're new here and you like movies, whether it be blockbusters, hidden gems, or everything in between, please consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases and some classics. But now, let's jump right into it. Number 11. Unfortunately, it's Tenet. Yeah, sorry. As big and bold as Nolan can get with some of these movies, this time it wasn't exactly enough for me. There are a lot of great ideas involving playing with time, with some of the same scenes playing 2 times, once forward and then once backwards, but the problem is it's just so unnecessarily confusing at times. The film leaves a lot shrouded in mystery, its characters are fairly underwritten and emotionally distant, with their motives being unclear sometimes, and the fact that it requires multiple viewings is good in the sense that you'll be able to pick up on clues Nolan placed throughout the movie, but also bad because it's extremely difficult to understand what's going on the first time around, especially with Nolan's uneven sound mixing making the dialogue go so low. That didn't help matters either. But this isn't a bad movie, it's still good. I don't dislike any of Nolan's movies, to be perfectly clear. The acting's great, the visuals are stunning, and there are a number of really intense moments, especially any of the action scenes. There just need to be a little more for me to be great. Number 10. Following. From Nolan's most recent film to his earliest, this probably would have made it a little higher on the list if it wasn't for some of the production values, which really isn't Nolan's fault. This was back when he was virtually unknown and he barely had any funding for this. It was shot on a $6,000 budget, it was in black and white, and Nolan functioned as most of the crew himself, and he had to use whatever lights in the room were available. And it just caused some of the time jumps to be a little unclear. This goes back and forth between 2 different time periods, and you don't always know right away where you are. But honestly, it's still a solid watch. It's a quick 70 minutes and it gives off a big Hitchcock vibe, especially being very similar to Strangers on a Train. Nolan shows right from his very first film he's a master of building up suspense, seen through this one protagonist who gets obsessed when he gets too involved with other people's lives. Despite it being low on the list, it's still a strong debut for Nolan. Number 9. Interstellar. This is a beautiful film. The cinematography is gorgeous, with the shots of outer space and the other planets visited being stunning. It explores the themes of sacrifice, showing how far one person is willing to go to save their family, and it has an outstanding performance from Matthew McConaughey, who leads a great cast. And while it's enjoyable, there was still potential for so much more. This already takes place in a futuristic world, and it explores years upon years worth of world building, as well as exploring some truly unique areas. But despite the 2.5-hour runtime, it felt like we got so little of it. While I like this, I think it would have worked a lot better as a miniseries. There's a lot of exposition that took up a good chunk of the runtime, and at the expense of worlds we could have explored. Still, what we do get to see is great and makes this worth watching. Number 8. Inception. The first movie that officially started Nolan's trend of keeping movies almost 100% secret, and he proves on the first shot that he can deliver. Inception isn't a perfect film, especially due to the fact it takes literally an hour to explain all of its rules, but it's still a hell of a great time. While the first half is good, the second half is where it's at. Once we really get to explore this dream world, it is absolutely riveting. The amount of creativity in this film can't be understated. Plus, it has a talented cast, with Leonardo DiCaprio being the movie's heart and soul, along with support from Ellen Page, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and many others. The action scenes are heart-racing, including one particular fight so exciting I had to stand up watching it. It's a well-crafted film that showed blockbusters can still be completely original. Number 7. The Dark Knight Rises. This movie's biggest sin? Having to follow The Dark Knight, a near impossible movie to follow. Well, actually, this is another film where its second half is stronger than its first. Again, it can be pretty exposition heavy at times, plus it crams in a slew of new characters and kind of rehashes some things from the previous 2 movies, but it's still a great time, and once we hone in on Bane and his plans, it gets a whole lot better. Like the other 2 movies, the fights are really well done, the cinematography is stunning, it explores plenty of great themes, and at the center of it all is another fantastic performance from Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne. All in all, this was a satisfying conclusion to the Dark Knight trilogy. Number 6. Dunkirk. This is probably the least Nolan-like of all of his movies. While there are a lot of thematic elements to his other films, this is literally just a dramatic recreation of a historical event from beginning to end. No particular themes explored, no in-depth character analysis, just this evacuation. And you know what? It's still awesome. This is a very fast-paced film, and it's actually one of Nolan's shortest movies. But he almost never wastes a minute. This is constantly on the move, with one thing right after another, right after another, right after another. The closest thing we do get to a theme is that war can be hell, as one of our main characters is a soldier going through trauma, and we also get some truly bone-chilling shots of some of these brutal attacks. It can feel really uneasy at times, to say the least, but it's certainly worth the watch.
Number 5.
The Prestige. This movie's both dark and a lot of fun at the same time. It's a movie that focuses on obsession, as you have these two magicians constantly trying to outdo one another, and they'll go through the most extreme measures possible to make that happen. And some of those methods are unnerving, and it's the fact that both giant schemers is what makes this an absolute blast to watch. Both Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale are fantastic here as the two lead characters. They manage to take two pretty unlikable people and make us so invested in this giant cat and mouse between them. And Nolan manages to do something truly unique and make us feel like we're in one giant magic show while watching this. He explains the setup to each magic trick in the opening scene and then presents the movie in exactly that format. This is one of Nolan's movies that I've seen the most, and it holds up every time.
Number 4.
Batman Begins. While The Dark Knight is the hands-down biggest game-changer in the superhero genre, Batman Begins was one of the movies that got the ball rolling. And I always feel like it's the least talked about entry in the Dark Knight trilogy, at least from my personal experience. But it is excellent. We get a very compelling origin story that manages to make action, pathos, and even a little bit of humor. But it can be a little disorienting at times, mainly due to how Nolan filmed some of the action scenes, and I remember people found it polarizing at the time, but once you get used to them, it's really not that bad. This film has an all-around great cast, with Christian Bale immediately proving he's one of the best Batman actors out there. And even though he's not talked about as much as Heath Ledger's Joker or even Tom Hardy's Bane, I really enjoyed Cillian Murphy as the Scarecrow. He did a phenomenal job, and he is highly underrated.
Number 3.
Insomnia. Speaking of underrated, more than likely this is the one Christopher Nolan movie you have not seen. Despite critical acclaim at the time, it seems to have faded into obscurity just a bit, maybe because it's the only film Nolan didn't write himself. Here he's simply a director for hire, with this being a remake of a 1997 Norwegian thriller, and it doesn't have as many of the usual twists and turns we're used to seeing in films like Memento, Inception, or The Prestige, but he still gives us a truly emotionally compelling film. This is a gripping thriller that dives heavily into morality and how far one would go to protect their image and their legacy. It's beautifully filmed and boasts three fantastic performances from Al Pacino, Hilary Swank, and in a rare sinister turn, Robin Williams. If you ever thought you can never get creeped out by a Robin Williams character, Nolan will shatter that for you. If you haven't seen it by now, definitely check it out.
Number 2.
The Dark Knight. The biggest game changer when it comes to the superhero genre. I don't think there's anything I can say at this point that hasn't been said about this movie, but yeah, all the hype surrounding it is 100% real. This is an explosive, action-packed, emotionally compelling experience that just leaves you entranced from the very first shot all the way to the credits. It is everything anyone could ever want in a Batman movie. Poignant themes, thrilling action sequences, Batman doing detective work, and truly memorable villains. Aaron Eckhart as Two-Face was incredibly well done. And then there's of course Heath Ledger as the Joker. I try to refrain from saying things like this often, but this is hands down one of the best performances I've ever seen. Mainly because this is a rare occasion where I don't actually see the actor. I see nothing but the Joker himself. Watch any other movie with Heath Ledger in it, and then watch this. It won't even remotely feel like the same person. And that's the definition of an amazing actor. I'm sure we'll have more great Batman movies on the way, but it'll be nearly impossible to top this one.
And at number 1,
Memento. One of the first Nolan movies I've ever seen, and to this day, it's still my all-time favorite. This is an expertly crafted movie from start to finish. It hits so many great themes, especially touching upon how we perceive things and what we'd be willing to do in order to maintain the images of people and events that we want to maintain. And it's another Nolan movie that has you hooked almost instantly. Despite the fact that it has this sort of novelty way of storytelling where it'll play backwards and the beginning of one scene is really the end of the next scene, it's not just a gimmick. In fact, it ends up being a lot of fun since once you watch it all the way through, you can go back and pick up on clues hidden throughout it. It's a film that absolutely has to be watched in the order in which it's told. I feel like it would lose a lot of its impact if you were to take it and rearrange everything so it's in chronological order. The film also boasts three incredible lead performances. Guy Pearce is really one of the most underrated actors of all time, as he knocks it out of the park here. And both Carrie-Anne Moss and Joe Pantoliano provide incredible support. It's a brilliant movie all around, and not only my favorite Nolan movie, but just one of my favorite movies of all time. And that's my list. I hope you enjoyed this. And like I said, I did a whole series on Nolan's films, so if you want more of my in-depth thoughts on each of these, I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description so you can go through them. And one thing you can say about Nolan is that no matter what your thoughts are on each of his films, he'll leave you with a lot to talk about, and I'm looking forward to whatever he has next up his sleeve. And for the record, this is just my personal list, not a definitive ranking. So with that being said, let's discuss. What's your ranking of Nolan's movies? What's your favorite? What's your least favorite? Did you agree with anything on my list at all? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll catch you next time.